Welcome to today's episode of the Hidden Struggles, where we shed light on the mental health challenges in the sports industries. I'm John, joined by my co-hosts Paras and Lavender. Nice to meet you.
Hey Zach, nice meeting you as well.
Today we're diving into an important and often overlooked issue: the impact of anxiety and depressions on the athletes, coaches, and sports professionals. Paras, do you have any ideas to share with us?
Yeah, thank you Zach, first of all, for having us. And today we are going to talk about mental health struggles. So in the sports industry, there are many mental health struggles, which includes anxiety, depression, and there are some real issues in sports. While we often admire athletes for their physical endurance and some mental toughness, but we rarely talk about the mental problems, the anxiety and the depression which the current athletes and the all sports industry is having right now. So
totally.
This is why today's conversation is very necessary. Hey Helen, do you have anything to speak?
Yeah, I think the stigma around the mental health in a sports remains strong. Like many athletes hesitate to seek help, feeling that they're seen as a weak player. So that's why they hesitate to seek help. But we have seen in recent years, more athletes are speaking out, and it's a time to take a mental health as serious as physical health.
Yeah, that's just crazy, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
we've take a look at the research and we'll find out more series about that. But before we get into the series, before we get into the academic part, let's break down what anxiety and depressions actually are.
Okay, so according to me, anxiety is just a small word, but honestly, it's not. So anxiety is characterized by excessive worry, fear, and tension, which nowadays athletes are having. They become anxious before any competition because they have a lot of pressure on them, the outer pressure, the inner pressure, that they have to perform very well. And because of the anxiety, because of the lots of tension and stress, it got impact, their performance got impact because of that. That's why athletes often experience a lot of anxiety, worrying about failure, that what will happen if we get failed, and what happen if we didn't get matched the expectations, and what people will feel, a lot of judgment.
Totally.
So, hey, Harvinder, do you have anything on depression?
So I'm gonna say depression on the other hand, involve feeling of sadness and hopeless and the lack of motivation. They usually get depressed because they wanna win, they don't wanna lose. So they don't wanna lose. For an athlete, they might struggle to get out of bed, losing the passion of their sports and even coaching their persons.
And for me, these conditions are just not rare in sports. In real life, people are facing all these problems. And the studies shows that around 25% of elite athletes experience the symptoms of depression, while 56% struggles with the anxiety. So
that's really serious, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now moving further, we have some academic theories on anxiety and depression in the sports. So the first is cognitive behavioral theory. In simple words, it is a kind of psychological approach that helps people understand how their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are connected. It explains that the negative thought pattern, like I must be perfect, can lead to negative thoughts like anxiety or stress, and unhealthy behavior like avoiding challenges.
Yes.
So the main goal of CBT is to break this cycle by changing the negative thought and replacing them with more positive and the realistic one. So, do you have anything on negative thinking patterns, like how think about
when we research the cognitive behavior theories, we find the negative thinking pattern is kind of like a main part of that. And for this pattern, it just believes that the negative thoughts often cause emotional problems, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, the athletes might thinking if they fail, they worthless, they just challenge you for their own values. And that might be cause anxieties, stress, and depressions. So, and furthermore, those negative thinkings will probably lead them to avoid trying to try new things or pushing themselves too hard, right?
Exactly.
So when we get into that, we for sure develop more about the CBTs, about the process, and we're just inviting Havenders to talk more about the process.
Yeah, I think the idea is to recognize this negative thought, challenge their accuracy, and replace them with a healthy and more balanced thoughts. CBT often involve exercise that help individuals identify their challenge and their thought pattern. They help me to identify their challenge and thought pattern. Like first, do you have any idea on the key concept of?
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I think one of the main strategies in CBT is called cognitive reframing. This means that changing the way you think about situation. Like if you think always that I must always win, it's a good thinking, but it's not always true. You are not gonna win every time. So instead of you must always win, you could learn to think. If you do any mistakes, how can you learn from those mistakes? So what you are doing wrong at that situation, which you can improve and which will not impact your future any games or something. So it's okay to make mistakes, but because they help you to grow and improve in the future. So focusing on the present, CBT is very much focused on the present. It doesn't focus too much on the past events, but looks at how you can change your current thinking and behaviors to improve your mental health. So, moving further, what are some common negative thought patterns that athletes face?
Well, yeah. When we're doing the research, we find that athletes often experience all kinds of negative source patterns that really damages their performance, their mental health. I can name a few of them. For first of all, the perfectionism, right? Every athlete's probably in the one period of their athlete time wanted to be a perfect person, right? Perfect athletes. They believe they must be perfect and cannot make any mistakes. That perfectionism will leading to a negative thinking of if they don't win, they kind of are not doing good enough and pushing themselves harder and harder, which is not good. Another thinking is like all or nothing thinking, right? When athletes viewing their situation in really extreme ways, such as if they don't perform perfectly, they just fail entirely. That's not right?
Yeah.
Another one we find is really hurting is catastrophic thinking, expecting the most worst outcomes, such as thinking if they don't perform well in the games, they probably lose their entire career.
I think
right?
so, yeah.
You've noticed that?
Yeah.
It's just quite common in the sports.
I think I have a view on it, like over generalizing, making a bold conclusion based on one event. Like if a shooter, if he thought I missed one shot,
Yes.
I always mess under pressure.
Yeah.
And the self-criticism, the harshly criticizing themselves after a mistake, leading to a feeling of worthless, like I'm failure because I didn't expectation, like they miss like something in their game. They said like I'm worthless, I can't do it. So they get like a pressure. They get like a pressure.
Yeah.
So for me, I would just like to add like 2-3 lines. Self-criticism is like the basic thing.
Yes.
If you are self-criticizing yourself before any game or anything, not just in the sports industry, 100% you are not gonna go enough. So you have to be good enough to think that you will do that thing before self-criticizing, so that you can just do everything perfectly.
Yeah. So when you finish your research of the negative thinking, Paris, how do you find that athletes could start recognizing when they're engaging with this negative thinking pattern?
Yeah, so I think that an athlete can start recognizing negative thinking by practicing mindfulness and becoming more self-aware. So some of the steps could include the monitoring self-talk, and the athlete can just talk by himself, like he should monitor, or an athlete should monitor self-talking paying attention to the inner dialogue and noticing when thoughts are critical or irrational. The second one could be the journaling thoughts, writing down thoughts after a practice. If an athletes come over after a practice or a competition, they can just write all the thoughts, what they are thinking, so that what happens after noticing that, they can help identifying the patterns of negative thinking. And do you want to add something?
Yeah, I have a view on it. Like a body cues, recognize the physical signs of such as like muscle tension and the heartbeat get fast. The shadow breathing, can be clue that negative thought are at play. And also have like another view, the checking for cognitive distortion, asking themselves if they are engaging in all or nothing think or making unreasonable assumption. For an example, like they could ask, am I doing this mistake? And I will always fail. And like I have a question, Bharat, can you give like a real-time example on how negative thought have affected athlete in the past?
Yes, so there are many athletes who have been impacted in the past. The first one could be Simon Biles. As you all know, Simon Biles in 2021 Olympics.
We know that.
So in 21 Olympics, as mentioned, Simon Biles stepped back from the competition because of the twisties. It is a mental block which was unsafe for her to go out and perform with all the pressure from the outside.
Yes.
And this is a real example of how negative pressure and the perfectionism can take a toll on the athlete's mental state. And the overwhelming expectation led to feelings of anxiety and fear, which she addressed by prioritizing the mental health.
Yes.
The number one could be Michael Phelps, the famous swimmer.
Yeah.
In 2014 Olympics, he's as your information, like he is a
Yes.
multi-winning Olympic gold medalist. So Michael Phelps experienced depression and struggled with negative self-talk. He often felt like he had to live up in the image of perfection because he was too good in his sport. So he was always getting self-talk, like what if in the next competition I couldn't perform, what will happen next. So he was doing a lot of negative self-talk, which he has experienced, which contributed to feelings of worthlessness when things didn't go as planned. So sometimes an athlete thinks that the things didn't go in my plan, so that means that I'm not worthy, which is not good.
Yeah, it's not good. And I have another good example of Naomi Osaka. Everybody knows about her experience from the 2021 French Open when she withdrew from the tournament due to mental health struggles. And including those pressures of handling social media attention is really hard for literally everybody, especially for elite athletes like Naomi Osaka. Those negative sorts from media attention is really about public expectations as well as like her own performance, and all of those stuff affects his mental health, and he's like seeking for therapies to help coping with those feelings. This is a good example of how the mental health part.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Havinder, let's talk about like how athletes typically handle about the failures.
So I think that
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So just
This
I'll
part.
skip this part. Harvinder, you asked a question. It was
No.
another question.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
So
So like I
let's
have
start like moving forward.
moving further, like I have another question. How do you athlete typically handle failure? Like how might CBT help them handle it differently?
Yeah, that's a nice question. I think athletes often handle failure by feeling disappointment, frustration, or shame. This may lead to self-blame, withdrawal, or avoidance from the sport, which can create a cycle of negative thinking.
Yeah.
For instance, if an athlete thinks that I'll fail once, I'll fail again, or I'll never be good enough. So this is a negative self-talk. And However, there could be like two types of mindset: a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Yeah.
If you have a fixed mindset, like I'm not talented enough and I'll never get better and I failed because I didn't do it good enough.
Yeah.
This is a fixed mindset. You are not looking for
Yes.
something growth. A growth mindset is typically you are focusing on growth. It doesn't matter if you fail today, but if you have a growth mindset that if I fail today, but I'm gonna learn with my mistakes and tomorrow I'm gonna be better. This is a kind of growth mindset which each and every individual in sports or in the
Yeah.
outer environment should have.
Yeah.
So, do you have something, Zach, on this?
Yeah, I have thoughts about that when I researched the CBT, the Cognitive Behavior Series. And I found it's really encourage athletes to see the failure as part of the learning process, rather than just say the failure as something that defines their worth. And it also helps with them develop self-compassion, and so they can treat themselves kindly when things don't go as planned, right?
Exactly.
And rather than being overly critical about themselves.
Yeah, totally.
And by reframing the failure and focus on the growth and the efforts, athletes really can develop their resistance, which is key to a long-term success.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Agree.
Yeah. So as we found, the CBT series is really productive in analyzing the mental health of people working in the sports and as well as athletes. As we dug deeper, we find another useful series to analyze the mental health part, which is a biopsychosocial model. Havinder, do you have any? Would you like to introduce about the model to us?
Yeah, the biopsycho model is a framework that looks at health and illness out of three lenses. The three lenses are biological, psychological, and the social. The biological include physical health and the genetic, and the psychological include thoughts, emotion, and the behavior. And the third one, social, include relation, culture, and the environment. It's just not about one aspect, but how these all interact to affect well-being, especially in a mental health. Then, do you have any example on it?
Yeah, I got a good example. For example, for the professional athlete, might have a genetic predisposition for the anxiety, which is a biological factor, and when they feel pressure to perform, it is a psychological factor. And when they're facing isolation from frequent travel, it is a social factor.
Yes.
So this model helps us to see how these factors combine to impact their mental health.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna share my view on how does it apply to mental health in a sports industry. I think from my perspective, the sports industry professionals like athlete, coach, and staff often face a unique pressure when they are in a game, when they are like in a big event. So they can use this model to help understand and to understand and address their mental health in the following ways. Do you have like any view on it?
Yeah, so moving further, I can say like there could be many factors. The number one could be biological factors.
Yeah.
So this factor means that there is a high physical demands like on the athletes, which can lead to fatigue, tiredness, and injuries or some hormonal changes. So because of this, it can easily increase the stress or depression.
Yeah.
For example, overtraining could lead to injuries. Overtraining can also lead to stress or
That's
depression,
fair comment, right? So,
and the outcome would be having mental stress,
yes.
or it would impact your mental health.
It's a biological factor.
Yes, and the other one would be psychological factors, the pressure to perform. Every athletes have a pressure to perform, and how they will perform in the competition. They have a fear of failure, and they have also a fear of public. Some of the athletes have a fear of public interaction.
Yeah.
Most of them are good in the gym. Most of the athletes are good in the field.
Yes.
But when it comes to the real life, performing in front of hundreds of people,
Yeah.
so they become very anxious, and
Yeah.
it would impact their performance. So
There's another, there's like another social factor I want to address is like for example, for the team dynamics, the fan expectations, and lack of a support system can really influence their mental health in terms of social factors. For example, a coach might feel isolated if they are lack of a peer support, affecting their well-beings, as well as to the athletes. So yeah. And here comes to another, questions. How does that apply to sports organizations in organization behavior? Sports organizations like teams and leagues can also use this biopsychosocial model to create a supportive environment, and we'll introduce about this to sports organizations and parents and leagues.
Yeah, so many big teams or leagues are already giving these kind of checkup. So the biological support could be offer medical checkups, nutrition plans, and injury prevention to reduce physical stress that impact mental health. The other one is psychological support, provide access to counselor, psychologist, stress management theories, or some workshop or seminar, or some mental health first aid training to help professionals cope with pressure. So we have one more social support. If Harvinder wants to say something.
I have a view on it. The foster team cohesion through activity ensure fair treatment, create policy that support work-life balance. So like a flexibility schedule with their family. If they spend time with their family, I think that would be like a big social support. And also I have an example on it. Like an organization might notice high burnout rate, use their model to implement counseling, and the team building retreat to improve this one. Then, do you have any?
Yeah, so the biopsychosocial model offers a really robust framework to understanding and addressing mental health in the sports industry and sport organizations.
And also I want to add something. And also by considering biological, psychological, and social factors, professionals can also receive a tailored support, while organization can foster the environment which promotes well-being.
I also have I'm gonna add like something like this approach not only enhance individual health but also the strength team and the performance and organization culture, ensuring to sustainable sports ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this biopsychosocial model is really helping not only with athletes but also with the sports organizations. We find it's really productive in addressing the mental health issues. And after reviewing those two series, let's take a look on some real-world applications of those series.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So moving further, we have some real-world applications. To make this podcast more impactful, we can expand something on real-world cases, team initiatives, and athletes' testimonials related to some mental health challenge in sports. So,
I have a real-time example of an NBA player. His name is Kevin Love. He experienced a panic attack during a game, I think in 2017, and later opened up about his struggle and anxiety and depression. And his transparency encouraged other players to speak out. Zach, do you have any example?
Yeah, for example, another NBA player, DeMar DeRozan, he publicly discussed his battle with the depressions and emphasizing how elite athletes often feel isolated in their struggles despite some public admiration.
So what programs the sports organization took, and some few mental health initiatives according to you?
Yeah, so let's just take the NBA as another example. The NBA Mental Health and Wellness Program. The NBA not really offer all players to access to that program to a licensed mental health professionals and wellness counselors and support resources. So their players don't have to struggle with themselves, but have more support from the league.
Exactly.
I have another program. The NFL is a total wellness initiative. The NFL implement a mental health program that provides support to player, staff, and coaches as well, I think. And it includes the confidential therapy service. parts? Do you any program?
Yeah, so lastly, the last example could be the EPL, English Premier League, and some mental health awareness. So what EPL does, EPL has integrated the mental health training for coaches and for staff to help recognize sign of stress and anxiety in most of the athletes. And some practical applications of these theories could be CBT in action. Most of the teams, like they hire sports psychologists to help athletes reframe the negative thoughts.
Yeah.
For instance, an athlete struggling with self-doubt before a match, so might work on replacing thoughts like "I will fail" with "I am prepared and capable." So these are the kind of strategies which psychologists basically do on the athletes.
A good application of the biopsychosocial model is, for example, a team that have built, building counseling services and help injured athletes not only with physical rehabilitations but also some mentally recoverness, and to ensure they're not into the depressions due to some inactivities or loss of opportunities.
Yeah, so now we will just go on reflection and some personal insights.
Yes.
So what do you think according to some reflection and personal insight? What are the progress and challenges in mental health
I think,
awareness?
I have a view on it. The things that what are improved, which are improved are the more athletes are openly discuss their mental health. They can discuss with their family and coaches, so it could help. It could help them. And another one is league and team are implementing formal mental health support structure. And the third one is the stigma surrounding mental health is slowly decreasing.
So Zach, do you have anything on this?
Yeah, we found the challenges still there, remain there. Some coaches and management still see the mental health as a weakness, which is not good, right? The pressure to perform despite the struggle still exists. Athletes still, failing to admitting to the struggle may affect their contracts or like sponsorship, sort of external impact on that, especially with fan perceptions, right?
So Zan and Harvinder, according to you, what are the final key takeaways and the future of mental health in the sports industry?
Yeah, I have a view on it. The sports industry is evolving, but the mental health is still under pressure compared to the physical training. And many athletes hesitate to seek help. I think that must be changed because if they don't get help, they don't get improve their physical their training, and they will never successful in their future. Zach, do you have any idea on it?
I think for sports managers, they must integrate the mental wellness program into their training schedules for sports professionals, as well as for the future of the sports management. Will more involved with AI-driven workflow tracking system to improve the athlete the well-being of athletes.
Yeah, AI is a good one. Yeah.
And to add on you, Zhang and Harvinder, and to wrap up the things, mental health is just as crucial as your physical health. So mental health is the most important thing. If you are not mentally stable, if you're physically stable but you are not stable from your mental state, you're not going to perform well enough. So, and also the CBT and the biopsychosocial model explain why athletes struggle and how they can be helped. We also discuss about the real world examples like the top athletes, Phillips, Osaka, Biles and Love. Even those big athletes fail to perform in front of those people, and they also feel some mental pressure, which prove that even the best athletes deal with the mental health challenges. So Harvinder, you have something?
Yeah, I have a view on it. Like a sports industry taking making a final. The sports league are finally taking the mental health seriously. But there's too much work to do in this industry, and reducing stigma require ongoing conversation, training, and support system. And to the finalize, I think for those listening, let's continue to the sport mental health awareness in a sports. Whether you are fan, coach, or athlete, you can help create a culture where mental health matters. So, then you wanna wrap up?
Yeah, we have really good conversation about mental health using two really productive models. And if you guys find it's really valuable of this discussion, feel free to share this episode and keep the conversation goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for having.